Welcome to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Liz Muschett, and joining me today for the full moon forecast for Aquarius is Justin Crockett Elsie, fellow astrologer, colleague, and friend. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, thanks, Liz. I'm excited to talk about the full moon.
Me too. So here we go. Um, it's exciting. The Aquarius full moon. Justin Crockett Elsie is an archetypal and Jyotish astrologer, teacher, author, and seer. The best way to get a hold of Justin is his email address at justin.elsie@gmail.com. And I'm an astrologer, author, and intuitive, graduate of the Dwarf Planet University, and certified relationship astrologer. And my website is alightpath.com. And we enjoy hearing from you. So we're talking about the full moon in Aquarius. And Aquarius is of the fixed modality, which is about maintaining and being steady and completing things. It's of the air element, which is about communication. Traditionally ruled by Saturn, the planet of structure, and Uranus, the modern ruler, is about sudden, unexpected change. Full moons are about culmination, release, and letting go. Aquarius is thinking outside the box and inspiration. And Leo is about heart and soul energy. Would you like to add anything to that, Justin?
Yeah. Well, I like how you pointed out that it's an air element in communication. So, for those who may not know, that rules the Aquarius rules the 11th house in astrology, which is group structure. And so, Aquarius does affect communications in a group and emerging technologies, let's say like social media. And I also like that you pointed out that they're fixed signs. They're also very individualistic signs. So if a person has their nodes in Leo or Aquarius, they'll tend to be a little bit more of a individual and stand out more as there's a stronger element of individuality here with this.
Thank you for sharing that. And this picture I took a few months back when I was looking for the aurora borealis in the sky, and you can't hardly see it, but it was taken at night, and I just thought it was a nice picture to add to the Aquarius full moon.
Yeah.
And another name for the Aquarius full moon is the Sturgeon moon on August 9th at 12:55 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time and 3:55 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The moon is at 16 degrees Aquarius in 59 minutes, and the sun is at 16 degrees Leo in 59 minutes. And I'm going to let Justin talk about the Nakshatras. And can you explain a little bit about what the Nakshatras are before you tell us about them?
Sure. So the Nakshatras are portions of the sky that we call the lunar mansions. And all the planets go through a nakshatra or in a lunar mansion any time of the day and night. And these are, again, sections of the sky with stars, and there's a particular um, mythology and meaning that's associated with these different nakshatras. And each nakshatra is divided into 4 sections or padas. And the first one is always ruled by fire. The second pada is always ruled by earth. Third pada is always ruled by air, and the fourth pada is always ruled by water. And one of the zodiac signs generally rules, and it's what we call the Navamsa, rules that pada. So it gives a sort of a flavor to the nakshatra pada that the planet's going through. So first we look at this, and so anytime we do the full moon, we look at what nakshatra or lunar mansion the sun is in and the moon is in, because it gives us a little bit of more of a layer of how this the sun and moon are going to affect us. So for this particular full moon, the sun is in the Aslesha nakshatra. And Aslesha is a nakshatra that's ruled by the deity called the Nagas. And these are the deified serpents or deities of wisdom in the 14 worlds in the Vedic text. And so it has sort of a serpent feel to it. And it's called the clinging star. And the ruling planet here is Mercury. The symbol is a coiled serpent. And The basis above is approach, and the basis below is evaluation, which is meaning is that this nakshatra is all about how we approach problems and how we evaluate them. So it kind of goes back to, if you think about how snakes approach something, they come up it very slowly, and there's either an agitation or irritation, either with the tail or the body or the tongue. And it's sort of this same type of energy. If we put it to kind of real world things, it's how we approach things and how we evaluate them. And for this particular pada, the theme here is ambition and the power to overcome difficulties. And
Thank
so,
you.
yeah, and then if we look at the moon's nakshatra, so kind of putting these themes together, the moon is in a nakshatra called Shravana, and it's in the fourth pada, which is ruled by water, and its ruling deity is Vishnu. So if anybody knows anything about Hinduism, Vishnu is one of the three gods heads, and Vishnu was the preserver. And this particular star is called the star of learning, or the star of listening, learning, because the other deity that's associated with this is Saraswati, who was the goddess of learning. So this is about listening and learning, and it kind of gives us a flavor to how we could use this moon or sun energy at this time. And the key word theme here says that it's receptive and has the power to connect with others. And so the basis of love, it's always trying to listen, intuit, and seek a path, and get onto that path to travel. So a lot of times what's interesting about this particular nakshatra, that it's very strong in people who give advice to others, because it listens. So teachers, counselors fall heavily into this particular nakshatra. So if you kind of put these two things together, this is more of a inner reflective moon, sun and moon at this period, because it's more about listening and overcoming that we could overcome obstacles.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So how many nakshatras are there?
There's 26.
Okay, and then there's 4 padas. Okay. That
Yeah,
makes it more clear.
26 to 27, depending upon how you view it.
Okay, thanks. And then Justin has put some favorable activities for this month, and I'll let him share that.
Yeah, so again, activities that allow for inner reflection. Usually when Liz, you and I are talking, we're like, "Oh yeah, this is a great moon to start doing something new," or "This is a great moon to travel." And blah. But this moon is actually more about, if you look at the nakshatras, is more about inner reflection. So any activities like yoga, meditation, doing spiritual rituals, listening and learning, taking classes. Listening to and connecting with others in relationship, and listening to your partners. Calculating and planning is a part of this, because that's part of that aslesha. It's calculating, and any humanitarian activities and music and writing. So any more activities that are represent reflection.
Well, I like those suggestions.
And I think you'll see when we get into the Sabian symbols how much these actually align with these concepts today.
Awesome. It gives us a great place to start and work on. So the planetary shifts around the full moon, Mars is very active in them and is a lot about action and activation. So I wanted to add that today. So on the 6th, Mars ingressed into Libra, so it changed signs. On the 8th, Mars is trine Uranus. On the 9th, Mars is opposite Neptune. On the 10th, Mars is trine Pluto. And those are exact times of when that happens. So even though it hasn't become exact, it's working up to that. So you will feel that energy several days before that and a few days after. And then on the 11th, Mercury stations direct, and also on the 11th, Venus conjuncts Jupiter. So it just felt like, since Mars was so active, that I wanted to add that in. Any comments?
No, I think you got it covered.
Okay, and here's the chart again. The ascendant is at 12 degrees Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury in Leo retrograde, because when this full moon is active, it's the Mercury is still retrograde, but it's really slowing down. It's probably almost at a standstill because it's getting ready to go direct. And then the midheaven is 12 degrees Aquarius, and the ruler is Saturn in Aries and Uranus in Gemini. The sun, and its ruler is the sun, so the sun is in Leo, and the moon is in Aquarius, and so the ruler is Saturn and Uranus again. Any comments that you'd like to add?
No, I think you got it covered. That's pretty straightforward.
So we're going to go into the Sabian symbols. In 1925, spiritist medium Elsie Wheeler channeled the Sabian symbols with the assistance of Mark Edmund Jones, and they are symbolic images. They're like a brief saying for each degree of the zodiac. And the Sabian symbols that we're using are from Dane Rujar's An Astrological Mandala. And the little picture here on the left is a little part of the book that was very popular. It's out of print, but I know it's being reprinted at this time, and you can even find it online if you want to look at Sabian symbols. There's quite a few references to Sabian symbols online. So we're going to start with the Sabian symbol for the ascendant, and we use 3 Sabian points leading up to the degree and what's next. So would you like to start off, Justin?
Yeah, and can I say something really quickly about the Sabians? And I like how you explained it to folks because we're really talking about a little vignette, I guess you may say, or story that each of these tell. And the reason they're important, I think, to just to add in here maybe, and is that it gives us again a deeper insight into the theme around the moon. And of course, we do look at the ascendant first and then the midheaven because that's how we're approaching the thing and what we're working towards. So it gives us a kind of a theme of how we're going to be feeling, how the collective is going to be feeling. And as we move forward into these things, so it's kind of interesting. Sometimes they're literal, and then other times they're abstract. So
Okay, so you want to lead off with the first one?
so yeah, sure. So we're looking at the ascendant, and so we're starting to see a theme here for the ascendant. Gemini, 11 degrees is newly opened lands offer the pioneer new opportunities for experience, and the keynote here is the power and joy of new beginnings or rising to the occasion.
Okay, and then Gemini 12 is an African girl fights for her independence in the city. And I used a different word because it's politically incorrect to use certain words in this time, and this is language from 100 years ago. So, liberation from the ghosts of the past, a total liquidation of the past. So, things that we've been conditioned by our past um, carry social patterns. And would you like to read the next one?
Yeah, and then Gemini 13 is a famous pianist giving a concert performance. And the keynote here is really the individual's fulfillment in performing a function in society and how people can be sort of a source of inspiration for others.
So, would you like to summarize the 3 for us?
Well, it's interesting is it kind of this, we're talking about how, and of course, we know this is just for the West Coast because this is the ascendant. But it's interesting how, we're talking about how Leo and Aquarius are very individualistic signs and relate to the individual. And here we see a very focus on the individual's experience and versus group experience going on here. So it's a person that's, rising to the occasion. There's new things going to be opening to us. And then, of course, we have to let go of some things from the past, and that how at the same time, by stepping into our truth and something new, we can be a source of inspiration for others.
Thank you for that. That was good. Okay. So for the sun degree,
I think we skipped a midheaven there. There we go.
Yeah, I must have pushed it too many times. Thanks. Midheaven at 12 degrees Aquarius, and it's interesting that the ascendant and the midheaven are both at 12 degrees because that doesn't happen very often that they're at the same degree. And we'll start with the degree leading up to Aquarius 11. During a silent hour, a man receives a new inspiration which may change his life. And the keynote is to rely upon inner inspiration and guidance at the start of new developments. And the key phrase is an overshadowing.
And then, of course, 12 degrees is the theme or image we have here is on a vast staircase stand people of different types graduated upward. And this is just giving us this important spiritual lesson that it's necessary for us to recognize differences and levels of development that between humans, and not everybody's at the same level, but we have to live and work together. And so it's just understanding the natural progression of states of consciousness, that there's younger souls and older souls.
And then Aquarius 13, a barometer, the ability to discover basic natural facts that allow us to plan in advance for action, anticipation. So how would you summarize these three?
Well, it's interesting is that that last one there, which is what it's moving towards, barometer, is sort of it's an energy of, I don't want to say prophecy or prediction or seeing the future, right? Anticipating what's coming, right? And at the same time, you see the first one where a person in a quiet inspiration has this aha moment, right? He receives a new inspiration. And so I think it's interesting with, again, this is the midheaven just for the West Coast, but it's given us this idea that that there's something new coming in, and if we're quiet enough, we can sense that, but that maybe not everybody gets it. Only we do, you know.
Well, and both these have talked about some inspiration, so I like that.
Yeah.
So the Sabian symbol for the sun, and I did round it off to 17 degrees because it was only 1 minute from that. So we'll start with Leo 16, unless you remember Leo 15 off the top of your head and you want to start with that
No,
one.
I really wish I'd remembered it, but anyway. So yeah, so the Leo 16 degrees, the storm ended. And of course, we know this is for everybody now, no matter where you're at in the world. The storm ended. All nature rejoices in brilliant sunshine, and it's the keynote here is talking about how there's always this surge of life and love after a major crisis, um, which I guess kind of goes back to, we say that that at some point the sun will shine, the joy, and so it's about the joy and power of new beginnings.
And then Leo 17, a volunteer church choir singing religious hymns. The feeling of togetherness which unites men and women in the dedication to a collective ideal. And the key phrase is about togetherness.
And then Leo 18 degrees, a chemist conducts an experiment for his students. And in acquiring into the hidden process of nature, the human mind experiences the thrill of discovery. So this is really, um, to me, these three kind of speak. These are really positive. I think, really, that this sun is bringing in this energy of new beginnings and togetherness with others that can happen, even in these times, even with the people that we choose to hang around more so.
Well, and I would just add through that because I agree with what you said. And it talks about the alchemy. So to me, it's about the magic that happens.
Yeah.
And then for the moon at 17 degrees, we'll start with Aquarius 16, a big businessman at his desk. The keynote is the ability to organize the many aspects of an enterprise involving a large group of human beings. And the key phrase is organization. Go ahead.
And Aquarius 17, a watchdog stands guard protecting his master and his possessions here. And so this really speaks to more the The need for people to protect ourselves and our individual, it's interesting, and one individual writes under complex social pressures. Boy, how can you say something that's taking place right now, right? A development of capacity to protect oneself and safeguard one's individual rights under complex social pressures. So it's this the more creative the person, the greater his or her need for protection in life.
Well, and that goes right along with Aquarius energy because sometimes people can come up with inspiration or ideas that are kind of before their time. So, sometimes people
Yep.
are not so accepting of it because it's like, that sounds kind of weird. So, Aquarius 18, a man's secret motives are being publicly unmasked. The keynote, the difficulty for the modern individual to keep secret his private past or his deeper motives. So the key phrase is unmasking of hidden motives and personal secrets. So how would you summarize the ones for the
Well,
moon?
it's interesting. I was just talking to a mutual astrologer friend of ours today, and we were talking, this difference between solar and lunar energy. And solar energy, I'd be curious what you think about this, but the solar energy tends to bring in more of a lightness and brightness to life. Whereas sometimes the moon gets kind of down into the nitty gritty of some of the darker psyche things that we have to deal with. And in this particular case, the Sabians for the Suns are like, oh yeah, new joy on new beginnings, everything's great. And then the moon comes and says, okay, now here's what you got to deal with psychologically, And isn't that really what, kind of that difference between lunar and sun? And in this particular one, I think the moon's given us a couple of themes here. Um, and also given us a technique to deal with it, being organized. And can we go back to that slide again?
Oh,
Um,
sorry about that.
yeah, no problem. And but that as we move forward in this, um, just sort of grounding our energy and setting boundaries. I like to use that instead of protection, setting boundaries with others. But it's also interesting, this degree, 18 degrees Aquarius. I found that this a lot of times brings in, this is more to do with karma, and that um, things will come out, secrets will come out with something around this. So there's this to me, this moon energy here is really bringing in some more deeper psychological stuff that we're going to deal with during this moon.
Exactly. So I want to mention that this is the last full moon, and then or it's not the last full moon, but the next full moon will be an eclipse. So it's the last full moon before the eclipse. So we're leading up
Mm-hmm.
to eclipse energy next month. And I don't think I need to say anything about this slide. So we're going to talk about the moon aspects. The moon is opposite the sun, sextile to Ceres, square Juno and Vesta, semi-square Saturn and Neptune, and sesquiquadrate Mars. So do you want to elaborate on any of those?
Well, again, we keep in mind sort of those moon and sun themes that we were just talking about. I think that, and this is, again, for folks who are watching, kind of how you use those saving symbols. So we look at these aspects and what they may mean, but then we kind of overlay it with the meaning of the saving symbols, and it kind of gives it a flavor. So I find it interesting that the moon, if we look at it, what jumps out to me is the squaring of Juno and Vesta. Um, Juno being relationships, and it's, of course, Juno right now is in Scorpio. So there's going to be things that come up around, again, what we're talking about, unmasking secrets. That's very Scorpionic. And it's about forgiveness. And so I think that's definitely a good time to pay attention to our emotions, how we're emotionally reacting in our relationships. What jumps out to you?
Well, one thing is like if we use the Ptolemaic aspects, which are conjunctions, squares, oppositions, trines, and sextiles, there wouldn't be that many aspects to the moon. And if we didn't use the asteroids, because Vesta and Juno are an asteroid, and so is Ceres, so there would be less aspects, and then we wouldn't be showing the sesquiquadrate to Mars. But that speaking, we kind of go a little deeper in our conversation here.
Right.
So it's, not, I would say, like all the energy that we've talked about, the Sabian symbols and the Nakshatras, yes, those are really, really important. But that semi square, which is half of a square, 45 degrees, with the moon to Saturn and Neptune is, adding a little bit of friction there. And then the sesquiquadrate is a square and a half to Mars. So, and like I said earlier, Mars is pretty active in this full moon, even though, if we didn't look at that sesquiquadrate, but later on we'll see some other activation with that. So, um, and we'll talk about the T square with the Vesta and Juno to the sun and moon, but
I I think what you point out is that semi-square to of the moon to Saturn and Neptune is pretty important there. Um, Definitely, to me, that means that there can be a tension between individuals emotionally and the collective. Because Saturn in Aries is about individualization, and Aries with Neptune and the collective there, and so it's also, by the way, a very psychic, intuitive aspect, having the Moon in an aspect to Saturn. So it does bring in some deeper psychological, emotional issues going on there.
well, and Saturn and Neptune are both retrograde, and Saturn wants to have structure, and Neptune wants to dissolve those structures, so it can be a little challenging.
Right. And so the moon in Aquarius wants that independence, that as I was saying, very individualistic signs. It can be a little aloof sometimes. Aquarius moon, or just sort of like you said before, 3 steps ahead, coming up with new ideas but not accepted yet. So this can mean where people may feel emotionally disconnected to some individuals in the collective, even more so than normal, and maybe even be questioning about how they're being seen by others, or their role in the collective right now, and may want to kind of just step back and just observe,
I think
desocialize.
that's good advice. I would agree with that. Anything else you'd like to say about this?
No, no.
Okay, so now we're gonna go into other aspects in the Aquarius full moon, and we have a Thor's hammer, or it can be, considered a fist, and the, apex or the pointing to is Saturn and Neptune. So Saturn and Neptune are sesquiquadrate, to the Sun and Vesta and Juno, and the Sun and Vesta and Juno are square to each other. So Thor's hammers, are usually trying to awaken the energy, to bring it out in the open, to like address it. And sometimes that can be difficult if people don't want to acknowledge that. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you covered that definitely
Okay.
for the Thor's hammer.
And then here's the T square that I talked about with Juno and Vesta square the sun and moon. So, there's a little bit of tension with our relationships, and Vesta is about our home and hearth. And like you talked about the solar and lunar energy before, you know, um, a little bit of friction with, maybe we don't want to address our emotions, but we just want to play or go have fun.
Right. And just to remind folks, we saw that challenging aspect between the moon and Juno as well, and Vesta in the first slide. So this is just another variation of that energy, of different, that tension between the moon and Juno and Vesta, along with the sun.
And then we have 3 yods or fingers of God. So we have one apex point or pointing to the moon, with the moon quincunx Jupiter and the south node. And of course, with Jupiter, we have Venus there. So I just included Venus too because Venus is so close. Then another one, the apex point is Ceres, quincunx to the south node, and Juno in Vesta, basically. And then the other apex point is the south node going back to the moon in Ceres. So several of the points are used in another yod, so they're repeating. So do you want to
Right.
talk about any of these yods?
Yeah, there's one that jumps out to me because the quincunx meaning that there's an imbalance in the relationship between those two planets, and so I find the one where the moon to the south node and then the moon to Venus and Jupiter. So that Venus and Jupiter has sort of this Cancerian family thing going on, and you can use family in quotes, so it's a little bit more um, expansive there. And that south node in Virgo, just having hit by Mars, being very analytical, needing to improve something. And then the moon is the point of that. Again, it takes us back to what I'm saying, that maybe at some point where people just kind of step back and kind of disconnect for a little bit from people who are family, and needing to maybe even improve some of those relationships through stepping back and observing and listening, you know.
Right, because that moon in Aquarius is uh, likes to hold things in. It's like they like people, but they don't like people. So sometimes it's like I feel like that they kind of hold back their emotions or committing fully. It's like I'll engage to a certain amount, but I don't want to engage fully. And with
Right.
Venus, here, it's another relationship component, which we've already talked about Juno in this chart being a relationship component. So there's a lot about relationships that we have, and that can be friends, it can be within our groups, it can be our work environment. I mean, it can be, a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever. It's like it's on many, many levels that the relationship is highlighted. And I think we've talked about that for many months, that relationships have been a big point that's being highlighted through several months now.
Yes, I agree.
And then also with that Cancer energy, the other apex point is Ceres, and that's about nurturing and nourishment. So there's this big component also in this chart about how are we being nourished. And since Ceres is in Aries, it's like we might be finding new ways, or that we have new needs of how we want to be nourished. And so we can, without South Node, we can be releasing some of the old ways that we used to get our nourishment. Now it's in a different way. And nourishment doesn't mean necessarily only food, but it can be, you know, in our relationships, are those supporting us? Do I feel seen? Do I feel heard? All those kind of things. And you talked about the Nakshatra, about listening and hearing. So that goes right
Right.
together with that.
And it might say this quincunx between Ceres and a fire sign and Juno and Vesta and a water sign really kind of is a red flag to me, or jumps out to me, because that's where we were talking in the last time in our last show. We were talking about that kadanta, how we say kadanta, which is this connection. Anytime there's this crossover between fire and water signs, there's steam. And so it's, when you're talking about bringing a situation of how we are nurtured, and we got Ceres, which is in Aries, but then it's imbalanced with Scorpio energy. Wow, you know what I mean when what happens when there's a crossover between Aries and Scorpio energy here. There's some tension or red flag there. So I think this is really, it does highlight something to be aware of how um it may be that we want to go off and do this because we want to go do this by ourselves, and our partner or friend or whoever it is kind of feels hurt because we went off and did something, just that Aries energy, and that we wanted to do something we felt nurtured us, but they didn't feel included in that. So it's there can be sort of a power thing there between Aries and Scorpio energy.
Well, and then the other apex point is that south node. So, you know, what other things in our lives is it time to make peace with and maybe let it go and move on.
Right. And that's
Anything
Virgo. That's Virgo energy. So that's even has its own theme coming in there, about improving that maybe.
exactly. Okay, then we have an air grand trine, and it forms into two kites. So Mars is trine Pluto, Pluto's trine Uranus, and back to Mars is the air grand trine. And then one kite point is at Saturn Neptune, and the other kite point is Mercury in Leo. And if it was just a grand trine, sometimes we get stuck in that energy because it keeps flowing and flowing and flowing. But then when you have a kite, that helps, to me, adjust and move that energy. And so that Mars is also opposite that Saturn and Neptune. And I think in the next slide, we'll talk about that more. What would you like to talk about the grand trine?
Well, I want to point out about this grand trine that it's sort of it's not a usual grand trine that we see because it doesn't happen that often, right? Because it's all about change, because we see this aspect between Uranus and Pluto, and those those go through their own cycle of squares, trines, conjunctions, and oppositions. But this particular snapshot in time where Mars, who's an activator, is trining both of them at the same time. I think this is really powerful. People should realize this is a really powerful trine towards change and disruption, and because of the three planets involved there. And it's not usual to see this one. I mean, we see it over through time, but not like every year. So this is sort of an unusual, and it's in air, which is all about communications and thinking. And I think this can bring in new ideas for innovation. At the same time, it can bring in a lot of chaos with communication and ideas and misinformation and change. So this kind of represents sort of this air chaos energy going on in the collective right now, but it can be used for something greater.
Well, and Pluto's retrograde and Mercury's still retrograde. And yes, it's like a lot of information is coming through, and it's like you need to take the time to fact check it, process it, file it, use it.
Right.
Okay, and then the other aspect is a mystic rectangle. And a mystic rectangle is made up of two trines, two sextiles, and two oppositions that all connect to each other. So we have Pluto trine Mars, and then Mars is sextile to Mercury, then Mercury is trine to Saturn, Neptune, and then a sextile back to Pluto, and then Mars is opposite that Saturn, Neptune, and Mercury is opposite Pluto. I'll let you start.
Well, I'm going to let you speak to this because this is you're the mystical rectangle expert. I'm just curious what you think about this one.
Well, mystic rectangles, to me, it's like they offer an opportunity or a gift, but to get to that opportunity and gift, there's some work to work out so those oppositions can see each other. And once you become aware of that, and then you can start working on the other part to dig in and receive the gift that it brings forth. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think you covered those really well.
And I'll see if we have any questions from our audience. No, it doesn't look like it, so we'll keep going. So now I'm going to talk about the lunar phase family or gestation cycle. It uses the 4 lunar phase, new, first quarter, full, and last quarter. And Pessin discovered these phases playing out in 9-month intervals. So the new phase is about beginning, first quarter adjustments, full phase is realization, and third quarter is reevaluation. Do I continue or finish and end? So the lunar phase family we're in right now began on February 9th of 2024 at 24 degrees Aquarius. So if you keep a journal or you write notes in a calendar, or maybe something significant happened right around that date, you could use several days before and after that, and see how maybe it's manifested. Then the first quarter of that, where it's an adjustment phase, occurred on November 8th of 2024 at 17 degrees Aquarius in 19 minutes. Then we're at the full phase on August 9th with this full moon at 16 degrees Aquarius in 59 minutes. And then the third quarter will be May 9th of 2026 at 29 degrees of Aquarius. So it's really interesting that it's at 29, because a lot of times looking at these, the numbers, the degrees will be a lot closer than how these span from 16 to 29. But most of the time when I look at these, they're within 2 or 3 degrees, but these span a broader area. So 29 to me is the degree of like finishing up that phase. So it'll be really interesting if you started something around that time to see how it completes and how it changes.
Right.
Can you think back of anything that occurred for you that you began maybe around February of 2024?
Oh, not that I would want to bring up on the show. If I can be really honest with you there.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay.
But
And then
I love this lunar facing, and I really encourage people to really watch that. This is kind of really, I think this is a really amazing part that you always bring up in the show.
the yearly lunar phase and began. The Aquarius new moon was on January 29th of 2025 at 9 degrees of Aquarius in 51 minutes. And we're at the Aquarius full moon at 16 degrees Aquarius in 59 minutes. So possibly something that you started at the beginning of the year, the first month, at the end, around that time. It's like maybe now you're seeing some light around it, or you've accomplished quite a few of the things that you set out to do. If you do write down your new moon desires, wishes, mantras, whatever, however you do that, or affirmations, to see how they're going, because sometimes you can look back at those. But I kind of feel like a lot of times from new moon to new moon, that's less than a month's time. It's like it's hard to accomplish big things. So I like the gestation cycle and the yearly lunar phase, because sometimes a little bit bigger project or a giant project takes a little more time. And so I like to look at those. And I want to thank Justin for joining me today. I want to thank our audience for watching. We appreciate you. And Justin and I do consultations on Zoom and in person in the Seattle area. We have newsletters and YouTube channels, so we always appreciate your support and subscriptions. And Justin, I'll let you tell about your slide here.
Yeah. And the best way to get a hold of me is through my email. And that's all I would say really quickly here.
And that email is justin.lz@gmail.com. And I have a variety of other shows, so lots to choose from, and lots of ones coming up. The Astrology Star Sisters, we have a number of shows. So check a couple of them out. We appreciate it. Thanks again, Justin, for joining me today. Oh, we have one more slide. I forgot. Justin and I are going to be on Talk Cosmos on August 17th, talking about the Virgo new moon at 0 degrees. So that's like, to me, initiation point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited about that one. How about you?
Yeah, definitely.
So thanks again. Oh, I have another one. I forgot. And I want to thank our sponsor, Astro Peregrine Software. And if you'd like a demonstration, you can go to astroperegrine.com and book that. So now we're at the last slide, I think. So thanks again, everybody. And thank you, Justin. And we'll be back again pretty soon. So we're going to say goodbye for now. Goodbye, Justin.
Goodbye. Thanks for having me.